Good morning, Central. My name's Harry Brown, and I am delighted to be with you. I spent 44 years in City Team, and then 2 years ago, the board set aside the church planning division to become a new organization called New Generation. So when I see the City Team stuff up there, I get kind of all warm and misty. So it's a joy to be with you. I'm going to give you just a little taste of what God is doing in the story of His glory and how He's using different things to do that. And I'm going to hopefully inspire you with the idea of the passionate pursuit of much fruit. John 15, by this my Father is glorified, that you produce much fruit, and so prove to be my disciple. Now, when you look at that picture, what do you see? See apples? Or do you see orchards? You can't get to orchards without apples, but God looks through the apple and sees the orchards that's going to come. He's interested in much fruit. He's interested in fruit that remains. It has to have quality. And He's interested in fruit that reproduces, and that's where those orchards come from. We all know the parable of the seed and the sower, right? So, oops, how did we get there? There. The parable of the seed and the sower. Good seed gets into good soil. The first three kinds of dirt, nothing good happens, right? The fourth kind of dirt, the seed goes in and it produces 30, 60, and 100-fold. But that's not the point of the parable. The point of the parable is that each one of those has the potential for 30, 60, or 100 more. And what that has done is rooted in our hearts the idea that the only way, underline that, it blinks red, the only way to complete the Great Commission is when ordinary people are multiplying disciples in their natural networks. That's the way God planned to get the job done, and that's where much fruit can come from. So now on to, what has God been doing with us? In the last almost 15 years, 70,000 new churches, 1.7 million new followers of Jesus, and about 35% of those are former Muslims. So it's not just what they call low-hanging fruit. And we're talking about 125 movements. And we define a movement as at least 100 new churches that have multiplied to at least 4 generations. That's the minimum standard. And now some of those movements are at 30 or more generations of churches planting churches planting churches. Why is that a big deal? Because we don't have money or management past generation 4 or 5. So when it gets out there into 25 and 30 and beyond, it's because the people of God have understood that He's the one that's asking them to make disciples and teach them to obey, and they're actually doing it. They're not doing it because they get paid. They're not doing it because it's a program. They're not doing it because somebody's pushing them. They're doing it because it's part of who they are. So let me tell you what that looks like in real life. An ordinary guy at the middle of this, if you can't read his name is Bahazi. Bahazi is a driver. His job is to get you from point A to point B. We were talking to Bahazi, who we trained in the process, and said, Bahazi, what is God doing in your natural network? Because that's the only way to get the job done. And he produced that chart. Somehow I'm hitting the buttons. Sorry. Bahazi produced this chart. And when I looked at this thing for the first time, I put my hand on that piece of paper and I said, oh, God in heaven, someday let my chart look like that, because it doesn't. And you know what the truth of it is? The truth of it is I was spiritually born with a genetic defect. And the spiritual genetic defect that I was born with is it's not my job. It's like somehow making disciples and teaching them to obey is on a list of spiritual gifts, and I didn't get it. That's theological nonsense. It's not a spiritual gift for some, it's a command for all. Bahazi didn't have that spiritual genetic defect, so he got out of the gate right away and began to share in his natural network. Now the beauty of this is multifaceted. He's an ordinary guy. He's not specially trained. He's not paid. Nobody in that graphic is paid. It happened quickly, it happened broadly, and if you look up there and you can see the colors, they each represent a different stream of society. And that's a big deal, because if it only stays in one stream, you only get one kind of people, but that's not what the lost look like. They're everywhere, and they're very different looking. So the gospel has to get into all segments of society, and that's what it looks like. And now we'll go to the next chart. Another guy. We blocked out his name because it's a very security-sensitive situation. This guy is a radical Muslim in his background. His passion was to kill Christians. But he had a kid that had a club foot. Our church planners knew what to do with that because we had a partnership with a group called Cure. They know how to fix cleft palates and club feet on broken kids. So what they did is they got the kid to the place where Cure can fix him. Cure did fix him. And Tawfiq, who's the guy who's blacked out there, became a follower of Jesus. And he turned all that passion, kind of Saul to Paul, into the cause of the kingdom. And we asked Tawfiq, what is God doing in your natural network? And he drew this chart. Same basic message, different guy, different country. Now, when Tawfiq was doing this, the bad guys didn't like it, so they ambushed him. They hacked him up with machetes and dropped him in the ditch for dead. God healed Tawfiq, raised him up, and then Tawfiq publicly forgave the perpetrators. When the Muslim imam saw that, they had never seen forgiveness, had no concept of what that looks like. So they said to the community, whatever Tawfiq is saying, you got to pay attention to him. Now, at that distance, you can't see it, but there's a bunch of little red names up there, along with the black ones. All the red ones are Muslim imams who are now followers of Jesus. And in one of those streams, there's red name, red name, red name, red name, red name. And you know why? Who's the natural network for a Muslim imam? Other imams. That's exactly how God designed it to work. Here's another story. India. I was sitting with these guys, took this picture earlier this year, and I said, hey guys, what's God doing in your natural network? And they brought out this big old scroll, and they started to unroll it around the room. And it was this picture here that just kept going. It was like 20 feet long. I said, guys, what is that? They said, Harry, this is the tree of life. Okay, I'll bite. What's a tree of life? They said, this is the story of what God's doing in our community. Every time a disciple makes a disciple, we draw a branch. And every time they make a disciple, we draw a branch. And here's what it looks like. This one led to that one, that led to this one, and around the room it went. Now, I was awestruck. In fact, I was so awestruck, I had a major stupid attack. I should have been taking a pano, and instead I took a snapshot. Missed my shot. The story of God's glory, the tree of life in their community. Isn't that a beautiful expression of what their understanding of God's calling on their life is? Okay, there we got it. How's this stuff happening? Through something we call Discovery Bible Study. This is not rocket science. You get lost people into the Word of God and you ask them, what does it say? What does it mean? What are you going to do? And who can you tell? Now, you can leave here understanding that without having to go to seminary or go to a seminar or anything else. What does it say? What does it mean? What are you going to do? And who can you tell? Because that works in places like this. Ordinary people getting together under a tree, asking each other, what does it mean? And what are you going to do? And who are you going to tell? Because that's happening, you get this. This is a picture of 650 people being baptized. If the camera was wide angle, there was 1,250 that were ready to go. We simply couldn't get it all done in one day, so we had to schedule phase 2. Now, these people being baptized on this day, none of them came because there was a big program. None of them came because there was a big church. None of them came because there was a big brand or a big budget or a big megaphone or a big personality. You know why they came? Because little groups meeting in homes or under trees or whatever said, here's what I'm going to do to obey, and here's who I'm going to tell. All of those people are a byproduct of who can I tell what God is doing for me. Ordinary people multiplying disciples in their natural networks is God's plan to complete the Great Commission. One last story. These guys are pygmies. The pygmies are the little people of Central Africa. They have been kicked around by everybody for eons. They're the bottom of the totem pole. Everybody looks down on them because they're forest dwellers, they're not sophisticated, they're small stature. They basically have been oppressed by everybody. About 14 years ago, one of our senior Africa guys, his name is Yanusa Jah, when we were putting together the strategy of which people groups do we want to go to and trying to pick the ones that we thought were most strategic and all that, Yanusa said, we must go to the pygmies. A lot of the other guys said, pygmies. Yanusa said, we need to go to the pygmies. And he started getting very, very insistent. Well, everything got started 14 years ago, and now if you roll the tape forward to now, from zero, there are 150,000 pygmy followers of Jesus, which is a full 15%. Amen. A full 15% of the pygmy population in Central Africa. Now, that happened not because there was a big crusade, a big event, a big anything. It's because people got together in small groups, begin to say, what does it say in terms of the scripture? What does it mean? What am I going to do and who can I tell? And as that was happening, it continued to spread. And that's exactly an illustration of how God is going to complete his work upon the earth. Now, I'm going to finish with, I got to take a course in clicker. I'm going to finish with just a little personal confession here. Been in ministry almost 46 years now. And about 15 years in, I kind of surveyed the land and said, you know what? Everything that's been happening is effectively planting and harvesting seedless grapes. The fruit is real, but it's one generation and done. One generation and done. And you know what? We can't get the job done when it's one generation and done. So that was sort of a crossroads in my life. And going forward, for me and for all of us, I say, no more seedless grapes. God bless you, Central.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Well, Harry, thank you so much for that wonderful update and insight. I love that. One big takeaway that I got out of just what Harry just said is the only way that the Great Commission gets fulfilled is by disciples making disciples in their natural network. And here's the reality. I have a natural network. You have a natural network. And we have a Great Commission to make an impact in that natural network. So thanks for that challenge to do that, to live that out. That actually Jesus gave us, right? And through the voice of Harry Brown today. So thank you for that. Agape International Missions is a tremendous organization that is doing big things, particularly in Cambodia, when it comes to rescuing women out of sex slave trafficking. And so you've heard from Matt before. Agape International Missions is not a new concept or a new organization that you've heard or hearing for the first time. For many of you, for some of you, maybe it is. But what may be the first time that you get to hear from is someone who has come out of that lifestyle. Yao Li is here with us, and she was in sex slave trafficking. She is a survivor of that, and so it is our honor to invite Yao Li to the stage here at Central Christian Church. Let's give her a warm Central Christian Church welcome. Let her hear it. Yao, thank you so much for being here with us today. And so maybe just tell us a little bit about what life was like as a child.
Okay, so I'm from Cambodia. I'm 28 years old. I was born and raised in Cambodia, and so I live with a small house. So I have like a big family, and then so I live with my mom, my dad, and 4 brother and 2 sister. So
You get, yeah.
thank you. So so it's a really poor country, and it's just hard to to go to school because there's no school. It just you have to pay for everything, not like in the U.S. that you go to school for free,
Right.
And so I had to start working at a young age, and then I started working when I was 8 years old, and collecting the recyclable at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and return for money. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So at 8 years old, began working, collecting recycles to help
To help
raise
the
money
family,
for
yeah,
the family.
to feed everybody in the family.
Wow. So, at what age were you actually sold into trafficking? How did all that come about?
I was sold when I was 9 years old. So I was tricked by my neighbor, and she wanted us to come to her house and offer me and my friend candy and new clothes, stuff like that. And then when we went to her house and we locked inside her house, and she want us to do whatever men want us to do. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Yal. Yeah. How did, in the midst of that, so that reality took place, how did you go from that reality to hearing about Jesus? How did any of that transpire in your life?
So this is before AIM SWAT team. So they have another organization like rescues called Hager.
Okay.
And so they took me to church, and they taught me about Jesus, and they showed me a different religion where from when I was child.
Yeah.
So my mom, my dad are Buddhists, and yeah, it's just kind of like it's just hard because my mom really strong in her religion, and at the same time, if like it's just so hard because you can't tell that how you see God, like how you believe in it, so something like that. But yeah, I would say like that I see how God work in my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I heard about him.
That's awesome. So there was a SWAT team
Yeah.
came in, performed a rescue mission,
Right.
and then
And they took
that
me to church.
organization began taking you to
Right.
church, and that's where you began hearing
Yeah.
about Jesus.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. Yeah, we can clap for that.
Thank you.
Was there any point in your life where you thought, I want Jesus to be a part of my life? Like how did that transpire? What took place there?
Yeah, there was a time that I wish Jesus was a part of my life every day. I lived sex trafficking, and like so me and other girl could be safe, and no one getting hurt. And I wish Jesus was there to escape me out the house. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you could share what AIM and Jesus have done for you in your life, how might you frame that up into some words for us today?
I would say AIM done a lot of things, and they give me a job to making T-shirt and bracelets, so it's out there, and
So
they.
you're actually a part of the team that would make some of those.
Yeah, that's
those goods.
back
Yeah,
in
okay.
Cambodia. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
they give me a counseling for the
Okay.
healing, and they send me to church every Sunday and give us free food. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And I would say about Jesus that, like, faith in God, I would say that faith in God taught me that life is not easy, but it makes things possible. It's just like example that, it's hard for me to sharing about my past experience, and it's bring up this painful, and each time when I talk it just
brings up a lot of emotions. We certainly get that. And so what I heard you say was following Jesus doesn't mean that you're going to have a life without trial,
Right.
but it means that he's going to be with you every step of the way, in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the heartache, in the midst of the emotion, in the midst of picking up some broken pieces in our lives.
Yep.
And I think all of us here can certainly relate to that, because we all have challenge, we all have heartache, we all have different scale, different scope, very different reality. But what I heard you say, even in the midst of what you've gone through, you've experienced Jesus. He's with you every step of that way.
And I would just, thanks God that that I, faith in Him. It make things possible that He give me strength by giving me sharing my story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good, Yao.
Thank
How, man, you've experienced so much, come through so much, and now you've taken this courageous step of faith to stand up with a goofy guy like me on stage talking to a room like this. How might you want to use your experience now to help others?
I would use my experience to raise awareness, to help people join the cause, and to help other younger like me to get out sex trafficking. And I would like to help other girl to become a stronger and to show them, like my experience and successful, and to show them that, that they are special, and, like Jesus loves them no matter what. Yeah.
So good. Such a powerful message, and you're living it out so well, and obviously
you.
demonstrated here in this courageous step of faith. So thank you so much for sharing some of your story with us here today, Yao. Appreciate it.